bike suspension is the best it's ever been. Long gone are the days of riding around on pogo sticks that made your bike feel more like a bucking bronco than a trail smashing machine. However, if your suspension isn't set up properly, you're not going to be able to reap the benefits that all those suspension nerds, engineers, have developed for today's forks and shocks. So grab your boingers and a shock pump and let's make sure your suspension is set up properly. We're dealing with RockShox suspension today, but a lot of these tips and tricks will apply to a wide variety of suspension brands. It's a good idea to wear your riding kit while doing this. Yeah, you'll look like a goof at home, but your helmet, pads, and shoes all add weight and affect your suspension. We're going to start with the rear shock and we're going to do a little something called setting sag. Basically, sag is how much your suspension compresses under your body weight. You will want to make sure your compression knobs are fully open so they don't affect this process. On a RockShox, turn towards the minus sign. I like to start off by pumping the shock up to my body weight in pounds for a good baseline. Come on now, your real body weight. We're starting from empty here, so while pumping, be sure to cycle your suspension a few times to balance the air chambers. It might be tough at first, but when it starts feeling like butter, you're there. Now, balancing on your bike to set sag can be tricky, so having a buddy to help isn't a bad idea. Just don't get lost in their eyes. Have your buddy hold the bike while you get on and level your pedals. Bounce up and down a couple times and relax. Then, have your buddy pull the O-ring to the seal. Lastly, carefully dismount so you don't disturb the O-ring. Usually you want to be right at 30% sag. The Lyric and Super Deluxe Air have markings to indicate how far the O-ring, aka the phonometer, has traveled. If your suspension doesn't have these markings, you'll want to grab a ruler and measure the length of your shock shaft and calculate 30% of that. Different bike manufacturers have different recommendations, so look it up online. Add or release some air and repeat the process until you've hit the mark. Let's move to the front of the bike and set sag on the fork. RockShox forks come with a handy pressure guide on the lower leg that should get you close, so let's start there. Hop on your bike and stand up with your feet on level pedals in an aggressive riding stance. Give the fork a couple of good hard squishes, pull the phonometer towards the seal, and delicately dismount. A good starting point for fork sag is also around 30%. If you're a heavier or hard charging rider, you may want less sag so that your suspension will support you when things get rowdy. On the flip side, if you ride at moderate speeds and prefer a more comfortable ride, you may want more sag. Now that your bits are saggy, let's start twisting some knobs. Remember those pogo sticks I mentioned earlier? Your rebound adjustment stops your suspension from turning into one of those. Start from a fully closed position, towards the turtle, and then give the bike a squish. From there, move the adjuster 2 clicks at a time towards the jackalope, which will gradually speed up how fast your shock returns to full travel. Now, there's no magic number or test for the perfect rebound, so you gotta play around with the setting on the trail. Different trails, weather conditions, and temperatures can all have an effect on rebound. Don't be scared to twist that knob. Setting rebound on your fork is a very similar process. Start from fully closed and compress the fork. Then, give the knob a couple clicks towards the jackalope and compress the fork once again. I try to find a nice balance between pogo and no-go. Quick, but not quick enough to lift the wheel off the ground. Once again, it's not an exact science, but I try to make my fork and shock have a similar rebound feel. So what about those little blue knobs? Well, generally they control compression. In other words, these knobs change how easily your fork moves through its travel in certain situations. On some forks and shocks, the blue knobs may act as a pedal assist, which firms up your suspension and helps you pedal along smooth surfaces like fire roads. However, the Lyric comes with a new Charger 2.1 damper with independent high-speed compression and low-speed compression. High-speed compression comes into play when your fork experiences an impact that causes it to compress quickly, like a fast, rocky section or a big drop. Low-speed compression is more about staying high in the travel during direction changes like berms, transitions, G-outs, and rollers. Braking and body movement also factor in here. For both of these adjustments, I like to start smack dab in the middle of the range. Do your knobs click 20 times as you turn them? Start at 10 and go for a ride on a trail you're familiar with. Pay attention to what your fork and shock are doing. Do they feel harsh in fast chundery sections? Maybe back off that high-speed compression. Does your fork dive through its travel every time you hit your brakes? Add some low-speed compression. Adding or reducing compression can greatly improve your ride. Well, there you have it. That's suspension setup in a nutshell. You did it! Remember, no two trails are the same, so I play with my suspension on nearly every ride. Do yourself a favor and write down the settings you landed on. If you ever forget or make adjustments, you'll be happy you did. Now go out, huck your meat, and twist those knobs. Every rider, bike, and trail is different, so experiment and have fun dialing in those boingers.